Hey everyone, it's Ashley. Welcome back to the Trinity Stamps YouTube channel. For today's video, I'm going to be making a very clean and simple die cut wreath using the Hello Sweet Friend stamp set and coordinating dies. And with the stamp set, I'll just be using these smallest floral pieces or stamps, and I'll be using a little bit of, or a couple of the sentiment stamps as well. So to start, I'm just going to arrange these on a piece of 110-pound cardstock. And this is cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, but this is just a piece that I had cut that would fit inside the Mini Misty. Using these, we'll be die cutting these out, so you can really put them on any size or any scrap piece of cardstock that you have. I'm going to ink them up. And at first I thought maybe I would be using Copic markers, so I used Memento ink. But I decided in the end to actually go with some colored pencils, and you'll see that I am sharpening a few of the pencils here, and that is just because you want to make sure that you keep this or these pencils really sharp when you're using them. That will give you the option of pressing down a little bit harder if you want a darker shade, or lighter if you want a lighter shade. If it's not very sharp, you tend to want to press down harder, even if you wanted the lightest shade of that color. So just to make them nice and sharp really helps the process of coloring, in my opinion. Because the florals and leaves are so small and I'm going to keep this card very, very clean and simple, I'm just going for a really simple coloring here. I am going to be using two colors, so the lighter shade and then a darker shadow shade. But I don't really go in too much to do too much shading, but you absolutely could take as much time as you wanted to put as much detail and depth into the florals as you see fit. For me and this card, I just thought a very simple color through would be totally fine, just adding some shadows here and there. So now that we've got all of the images colored, stamped and colored, I'm going to be using the coordinating dies to cut them out. I use a piece of painter's tape that I've taken some tack off with my pants. I usually just put it on my pants and then rip it up. That way it's sort of not as tacky, but also washi tape is a great tape to use. It seems to be a very low tack tape, and it's really nice to rip it off and not have any of the paper rip off with the die cuts. So I have to send that through my die cutting machine a few times to make sure I get all of the pieces cut out, and then I am ready to go ahead and assemble my wreath. So I'm going to assemble it here onto my card front, and this card front is 110-pound white cardstock, and it is cut to 4 by 5 1/4, so a 1/4 inch smaller all the way around than a standard A2 sized card. And I'm assembling it here on my card base, or my card front, I'm sorry, just to see the size that I want it to be, to kind of get an idea of where I'd like the flowers to go and where I'd like the leaves to go, and if I want any of the bits poking out. I tend to like my wreaths to look a little less perfect and symmetrical and a little bit more sort of handmade, like somebody put the flowers there by themselves and together. But when I go ahead and glue it, I'm going to glue the pieces in my hand and then put it onto the glass mat. That way none of it sticks or gets any glue on my card front. I don't want anything to stick to my card front until I'm ready to use foam tape to adhere the wreath all put together. You'll see here I am using Tombow aqua glue, and I've just ran out of my multi glue. I don't really recommend this glue for these tiny pieces of cardstock. It's a very water-based glue and it can warp your card, but at the moment it is all I had. I do have my glue on the way, but for the moment this is all I had. So I had to work with what I had, and I'm sure that we've all been there. I am using foam tape to go ahead and adhere the entire wreath to the card front. So I am going to just cut small pieces off, and I've recently switched to the 1 inch thick foam tape rather than the 1/2 inch thick foam tape, and I like it a little bit better only because I really can choose the size that I want. With the 1/2 inch you can't get any bigger, but of course you could get smaller if you wanted. With this tape it's really nice because I can cut out small pieces if I want to, and then still have enough left on that roll to go ahead and adhere or use it in other things. When adhering the wreath to my card front, I'm careful not to apply too much pressure until I get it exactly where I want it. It's pretty easy without a lot of pressure to pull it up without pulling any of the cardstock, but once you apply pressure, it gets really tough to get it off without tearing the cardstock into pieces. I'm using a missing you sentiment, so each of these words is separate. I just put them on one acrylic block and used VersaFine Onyx black ink to stamp it onto a spare piece or a scrap piece of cardstock. And I love that there are dies with these words, so you can use them as a one layer right on a card front, or you can do what I'm doing here and use the dies to cut them out. To be sure that I get the card front in the perfect center of my card base, I use glue to adhere it, and this is just because it gives me a little bit of wiggle room, a little time to move to the left or to the right to make sure that the spacing is pretty perfect. I am using white on white here, so I suppose it wouldn't be so important, but in my head I really like everything just to look nice and perfect and where I want it. So here is the final card. I went back and forth with adding some Nuvo drops or some sequins, and I thought, you know what, let me just leave it really clean and simple. And I really love the way that it turned out in the end. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, my personal YouTube channel, along with all of the products used today, are listed in the description. Thanks so much, and I will see you again very soon. Thank you. Bye.